Hello, my name is Claudia Tornquist. I'm the President and CEO of Kodiak Copper. I'm joined today by Chris Taylor, the founder and chairman of Kodiak Copper. Kodiak is a copper exploration company with focused on the MPD copper gold project in a mining region in southern British Columbia, where today we have announced our maiden resource, a big important milestone for our company.
Claudia, good to see you, and Chris, good to see you, sir. We are going to talk copper. We need some good copper stories out there. Now, this is, I think, framed as the initial mineral resource, because this is it relates to kind of 4 of the kind of 7 mineralized zones that you're looking at. Tell us what the numbers are, and then maybe what they mean, Claudia.
Yeah, so today we've released a resource estimate for 4 out of 7 mineralized zones that we have outlined today at MPD. You might ask why 4 first, 3 later. That's simply a reflection of the characteristics of the project. We had 4 zones where we are ready now, where we have the mineral resource estimate. The 3 others, we are drilling a bit more as we speak, and those results will be incorporated, and then those 3 zones, the resource estimate for those will be added, and by the end of the year we'll have the full maiden resource for the MPD project. So important to keep in mind, what we look at now is only part of the story, but that part we are very pleased with. I think it tells the market that MPD has the potential to become a major mine. We have outlined between indicated and inferred some 300 million tons of mineralization and grades that measure up very well compared to other projects and mines in BC. For our indicated, we have a 0.42% copper equivalent, for the inferred 0.33. So very pleased with what we have. And yeah, as I said, it's a starting point. More to come in the second half of the year, and much more to come after that, because still all wide open and room for expansion and growth beyond the initial maiden estimate.
Well, let's talk about the comparisons here, because I think you're sort of there, so sub $50 million company, and you perhaps haven't got the kind of credit for the scale of the opportunity in front of you, because I think people are waiting to see, well, this is a good start, then initial maiden resource is a good start. So when you look at the likes of other copper companies in BC or even kind of further afield, I mean, how do you stack up?
Our market cap at the moment is around the $50 million mark. And if you compare to other companies that also have copper porphyry exploration projects, but are further down the road, have a resource already, that's companies such as North Isle, Faraday, that's maybe Copper Fox. Those companies, they trade at 150 million, 200 million or more. And the fact that Kodiak has now explored for 6 years, and very systematic exploration and consolidation, and until now the market just wasn't able to really see and know how much do we actually have. That's what has held back our valuation, I believe. And the resource now, maiden resource, will really put a number on the amount of mineralization we have, on the grades we have, and will demonstrate, or demonstrates to the market that, we have mineralization that's good for a top-tier mine, and that I'm confident will be the start for us to close this valuation gap to other companies that have similar projects.
Well, can I ask about how you kind of display the information, and kind of that split between indicated and inferred in this mineral resource? You made it clear this only relates to kind of 4 of the 7 mineralized zones. At the moment, there's more to come. So in terms of how you allocate your capital going forward, will you kind of be doing more kind of drilling to drive an inferred number, or do you think it's important to get into the indicated numbers as quickly as possible?
Yeah, I mean the category division that we see right now is mostly just a function of where we've done the most drilling on these various deposits ourselves And we focused a lot on the gate zone, so a lot of the indicated category at the moment comes from the gate zone. I think it's important. The question that I had for the last couple of years is really, where have you guys got to with the drilling that you've done? And this gives us a really good opportunity to say, look, we still have a large number of targets that we want to test on the project, but we have not been wasting our time. So now when you look at Kodiak, you'll see that we have, it's billions of dollars of metal in the ground that are defined in these sort of pit scenarios. And that's a great way to give us that. It's basically a foundation of value to build on.
Right, but if you look at this MRE, I mean, do you think it validates your exploration model today, or have lessons been learned, and you maybe look at the next kind of phase of drilling differently?
I think what we need to do is just, we've been very successful with defining resources in the areas that we focused on. And we've got to the point now where, as some of the audience knows and some of the shareholders know, I've worked at a number of these copper projects in BC over the years. Right now, we're already at the point where one of the deposits that was a mine and has been operating for about 30 years that I worked at previously has very similar grades and size to what we're looking at now. And that's been a successful operation for a very long time. So I just want everybody to know that we're demonstrating the success of what we've been doing, and it makes me laugh a little bit. I remember when we got the MPD project in the first place, there's a geologist that lives near the project that I know quite well, and he said, why are you guys going up there? There's no copper up there. And now if we just use the kind of equivalent cutoff grades to the mines around us, you're looking at between 2 and 3 billion pounds of copper equivalent roughly, and that's worth more than $10 billion in the ground in resource. So there actually is some copper up on that project. So it's nice to be able to show everybody. And I was doing some traveling recently, and it was quite amusing to me because it was with the guys that we use for the visualization tools, the Verify tools. And one of them read one of our news releases, and he made an exclamation. And I said, well, what's the exclamation for? And he said, well, why aren't you guys just drilling these great targets that we found? And I said, well, yeah, we like those targets too, but it's time to show our investors that there's a base case evaluation here, which is higher than what the company's currently looking at. So I'm really happy to get these kind of numbers out, and it shows everybody that we've spent their money well and that there's a lot more to come.
Right, and in terms of, I guess, future drilling, we're talking about the first 4 of 7. The next 3, are they going to be the same again? Is it going to be a little bit less? Because obviously you go for your favorite targets, your most prospective targets first. So what can we expect going forward with, say, the second part of this initial maiden resource?
What I would highlight is that the second part will be important. It's the zones in the southern portion of the property, west, added, and south. And that's there where we intersected and also had in historic drilling a lot of near-surface, high-grade mineralization. So that'll be an important addition to what we currently have. And the zones are sizable, so it will definitely be a material step up when we add those zones to the maiden resource estimate in the autumn.
Okay, so just if you don't mind, kind of sticking with that, is what's the timing on all of this work, and the inevitable question you're going to be asked, which is, enough is never enough, and here people are going to say, well, when's the PEA come out? So how much more work do you need to do before you consider moving to kind of the economic phase?
Well, first things first, the full resource will come out later in the year. That's what we're at the moment fully focused on. And we will also later in the year then detail or come out and announce in more detail what the follow-up steps will be. There will be for sure be more metallurgy, there will be more drilling, there will be a PEA. But what exactly we do in the next year and going forward, and what first, what next, all of that will work out over the coming month and then announce when we're ready.
Right. And do you think this is enough for your kind of major shareholders like Tech, Conwave, etc.? Are they going, well, actually, not bad guys. We can get a better sense of the potential, a better sense of what we bought into. And they probably did they have access to data rooms, etc.? Or were they waiting for this MRE as well?
Well, we haven't spoken to them yet, but I would be very surprised if they didn't like what they see. As I said, we have now visibility to several billions of pounds of copper and gold in the ground, and have more to come later in the year. So it's really, we have visibility of a major big project and the path to becoming a big mine.
Okay, and maybe one for Chris, if you don't mind, Chris. And I sort of asked it before, but I wanted to get a more detailed answer with regards to the kind of geological model behind the MRE. Are there any assumptions that still need testing? I'm not saying, oh, have we done anything wrong? We're saying, the things that you didn't sort of get to the bottom of before having to release the MRE.
Yeah, if you look through the information that the resources contain, so the different deposits are defined on different criteria. Some is it based on some of the models. We have enough data to talk about alteration envelopes. Some of them it's geology based, and some of them are more based on the drill assays. And the more drilling that we do in the various deposits, the better we can model them. And that's really a factor that is going into the later disclosure of the zones from the south part of the project, is that we found we needed to do a little bit more of our own work in those in order to properly constrain them.
Okay. And then things like, I think Claudia just mentioned, obviously, metallurgy, etc. In terms of confidence levels over recoveries for the pit shell optimization, can that get better?
These are pretty standard porphyries for this region of British Columbia, and they all have very similar types of recoveries. And what we've seen in the metallurgical work that we've done right now is it's right down the middle for local porphyry deposits. So I'm not expecting any surprises that way at all.
Right. Okay. And I guess so. I'm not quite sure I quite understood. You think there's some sort of variability in the mineralization styles across the zones, given the scale of this, and does that cause any concern for further down the line when you're starting to look at the economics?
I think like the kind of variability that we see in grade and host rock and what have you, it's very similar to what I've worked with before. It hasn't been an issue for processing or life of mine exploitation for those other projects, and I don't think it's going to be a problem here either.
Right. Okay. So in terms of those kind of extensions, because you're going to open multiple directions in terms of where the focus is, you sort of clear go chase the good stuff first. So in which case, what are the highest priority extensions for you?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because one of the factors that we haven't discussed at all is there's quite a bit of optionality around zones like the gate zone, and this resource disclosure is all based on open pit scenarios. But because that's a higher grade deposit, there is a scenario that we can consider where there's underground development instead or along with. And there's zones on gate, like the mineralization is not cut off and the grades are quite good. So in terms of following up on material that adds a lot of value over the long term, there is potential there, for instance, to go through other zones like the Ketchen zone, which is included here. It's shallow, it's decent grade, but it's right at the surface. And we didn't do any drilling on it. We found that we had sufficient data on work that was done less than 10 years ago to immediately put a resource out. But there's very obvious directions for extension on that deposit, which are, we understand the controls quite well based on that data. And so there's a lot of really low-hanging fruit that can be brought in on that one, for instance. So we have enough information to know where we can grow these things over the short term. And there's different, like in the case of the gate zone, different mining type scenarios that we could consider.
So, I mean, like you're talking about potentially 20 other targets, right? There's a lot of optionality, to use your word there. But how do you allocate the capital and human resource in terms of that? Showing it's big, but maybe big enough for now is also good. And maybe let's show inferred versus, let's show indicated versus inferred. How do you get that kind of balance right between that capital allocation?
Yeah, and this is one of the things, like when you're an explorationist like me, you always want to go drill more holes and new targets because you see the effect on the market of new discoveries, and that's always very appealing. But at the point of time that we're at here now, with 5 or 6 years of work on this project, it was an important deliverable for us to be able to provide this initial resource estimate. There's some great targets that we have sitting out there, really obvious obvious ones that have great high-grade samples on surface in other areas. The Verify group, the AI group that we work with, has identified a number of other high-priority targets that we have quite a bit of confidence in, and some of those have verification samples that have been taken from surface as well. So these are exciting exploration add-ons to what we've got here. But again, you do want to show people that you believe that your company is undervalued because you're sitting on top of billions of dollars worth of mineralization that's already been found.
Right, and I think you're already saying that. Sorry, Claudia, go.
Well, just to add to that, I would say at this stage, it's the famous 80-20 or even 90-10. We really focused on the resource and on extending the zones that make up the resource. And on the side, also test the odd exploration target because, yeah, as Chris says, there are lots of further targets and potential discoveries to be made, but the resource really is our focus and growing the resource.
Do you think that's what the market is valuing at the moment? When you look at these other companies that we comped to earlier in this conversation, is that what the current shape of the market rewards?
I liked your comment earlier, Matthew. It is the kind of market that rewards the proof in the pudding at this point. So we've seen a number of other companies do well based on resource disclosures, whereas back in the Great Bear day, we did quite well based on not having to go through the full disclosure process. Here, it's a bit of a show me market for companies that have good resources in their pockets.
Okay. And can I just ask, so sticking with slightly technical here, in terms of the kind of geological or even, I guess, hydrological risks identified, how does that kind of shape the kind of the current work and the ongoing work? How do you avoid or circumvent any of those risks?
I guess I would have to answer in the sense that I don't see a lot of geological risk with the project. Porphyries they can be very similar to each other. Like, we haven't identified any deleterious elements in any of the metallurgy. There's nothing that I understand that there would be a significant geotechnical risk with any of the projects that we've seen so far. There's always de-risking that you do as you go through the economic studies. Like, obviously you do geotechnical drilling and other things, and we haven't got to that stage yet. But the risks seem very run-of-the-mill to me for the project so far, very much in line with what else you'd see in the district.
Okay, now obviously it's early days. There's a lot more information to come, and talking about development options may be a bit premature. But when I speak to operators, they've got a very good sense very quickly about roughly how this is going to work out. But especially when it's a big project, a regional project. You've got to look at, can we do this standalone? Is that realistic, or is a JV or a sale more realistic to do this? I mean, where are your heads at in terms of how you evolve the project?
Well, what I would say, the type of project we have, a big porphyry project, that's not the type of project a junior typically builds. I think around the world, I can't think of a single porphyry mine that was built by the junior who made the initial discovery and did the exploration. What you typically see in the market is that the juniors do the exploration, and then the major companies who do not do that much exploration, they acquire projects once the junior has shown size potential, has shown that it's a project that can become a mine that's attractive to a major. And I believe in that context also, the resource is an important milestone, because that also gives the big companies some numbers to get their teeth into. And often you see M&A activity heat up once resource information is out in the market. Okay.
I just wanted you to be kind of clear with the audience what they're investing into here. I say typical for projects like this. Can I just, in terms of whoever does kind of come and pick this thing up, how much work are you going to be doing for them in terms of whether it be community engagement or permitting, licensing, etc., or is this a case of show me how big?
Well, the community engagement, environmental work, that's a big and important part of our work and has been ever since we started. In my mind, that's the work you absolutely have to do to de-risk the project and not run into risks once you have invested millions of dollars. So that's really part and parcel of our work, part and parcel also of the permitting. what really helps us is that we are in an existing mining district. So the communities around us, the First Nations, they know mining, they understand mining, and that makes it a whole lot easier, this whole angle of our work.
Okay. And like I could ask about the money situation and, you know, what the kind of focus will be pre-PEA. So where are you today with cash? Will you be raising money to, you know, expand into the other kind of 7 mineralized zones before the PEA comes out, and how are you approaching it?
Well, we raised money in the spring for this year's drill program, so we're fully funded, doing all our work that we've just recently announced, and that will lead us to then the full maiden resource estimate later in the year. So fully funded, that's always a good place to be, of course.
It is. And just like I mentioned earlier, in terms of the shareholders, people like tech, and what does that mean for companies like yourself? I mean, do you still have the ability to kind of create some competitive tension there, or is that expected to be a shoe-in for them? You know, you control what you can control, and it's nice having them on the register, but you got to drive that valuation. So how does that work?
Well, Tech is one of our largest shareholders with just under 10%, about 8 or so percent of the share capital at the moment. And they invested because they like what they see and want to have a foot in the door. And they've certainly been a very good partner over the years. How things will pan out as and when there is interest or M&A might become more acute, we will see. I think there are lots of other companies who are potentially interested in our project as well. And yeah, all of that remains to be seen.
Okay. And what are the other kind of, and we just briefly upon a couple there, but what are the other kind of risk factors or de-risking activities that you're looking to, you know, make sure you're all over and on top of?
Well, we've been de-risking the project over the years with our exploration work, and what we just talked about before, the whole sort of environmental community permitting side. That's also an important part of de-risking the project, and the resource now, the number that we've put on the amount of mineralization, that's really also an important stake in the ground to de-risk the project, demonstrate that it has the potential to become a top-tier mine, and hence a very important step forward.
Okay, investors are going to be like, show me the money, right? You're valued sub 50 million. This should have a good reaction in the market. I mean, it would be nuts if it doesn't, but how do I, as an investor, make money from you, investing in you? What are you going to be doing on top of this initial maiden resource estimate, which is going to drive that valuation higher? And why do you think that's going to work?
I think the investment case for now is really the value gap between us and companies that have porphyry projects that do have a resource out there, and that gap is significant. Like, those companies have often market caps that are 3-4 times higher than what we have, and that's what I would argue makes Kodiak a very good investment proposition at this time. And with the resource now out, first part out, and more to come, and more growth potential after that, I'm confident that we'll be able to close this valuation gap.
Okay, but what else? I've got a kind of fully funded exploration program as well, through to some kind of PEA, but only to that point. Do you think those drill results are going to get recognized in this market?
We certainly have lots of news flow. We've announced a drill program of 5,500 meters. So those results will be coming starting later in the summer and then throughout the autumn. So lots of news flow between exploration results and further resource announcement, and then more plans for next year. So it should be a news and catalyst rich year for our investors.
And what do you think the competition's like in terms of optionality for investors looking at copper? Copper's obviously, it's kind of gone up to $5, settled down at sort of mid fours at the moment. I'm trying to find companies that I guess matter in the space at the moment. Are you seeing a good reaction in terms of like potential new suppliers in the space, or is it kind of hard pickings at the moment?
I would say at this time, the pipeline of projects, of exploration projects, development projects in the copper sector are at an all-time low. There haven't been many discoveries. There haven't been any major discoveries in the last decade. So we know already now that there will not be a major big mine built in the next 10 years or so, because if it hasn't been discovered in the last 10 years, it won't be built in the next 10 years. And there's really a dearth of good copper projects out there, and obviously lots of copper demand on the horizon from AI, technology, green revolution, etc., etc. And I can tell from my own experience that lots of big companies are really looking for copper projects, and that's not only the copper producers who have been traditionally looking, but also all the gold producers, or most of the gold producers, are now really actively looking into copper. So I believe with a good copper project, we are very well placed, and there's a lot of demand out there in the market for the next good copper project.
There we go. Agreed. Chris, should we let you have the final word?
Yeah, I would add to Claudia's comment there too. I mean, the geopolitics of the world has changed, and now having a copper asset in a safe jurisdiction like Canada has extra value. And we've always been happy with our location in southern BC, but the fact that we're dealing with the Canadian copper project, now it's growing to kind of a critical mass in size. This is a great thing for Kodiak to be sitting on, because there's access to territories in the world that has been somewhat restricted as of late, and we're sitting in a good position in a comfortable tier 1 kind of jurisdiction, and that's somewhere that we're very happy to be.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming on. Congrats on the initial Maiden resource. Good news to have some good news out there in the market at the moment regarding copper. So folks, we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.